to practice this skill, I actually had my students to take that place value number line that we made and stretch it out on the table. And I gave them some post-it notes to move around underneath those place values or on those places. And we built numbers to do this example. So while we were constructing numbers, we were writing these examples. So let me show you how I had them to start. Remember, on this page, I am still anchoring. Okay. So I had them to write, for example, this number on post-it notes. I had them do a 6, a 2, and 3 zeros. So I had them to write a 2, a 6, a 0, 0, 0. And I had them to lay those post-it notes under that number line in the right places so they could see this number lining up. And then I said, okay, we don't have any decimal places. We don't have any units. There are no numbers in these places. So the first place of interest to me is right here. And I said, what place is that 6 in? And because the Post-its were lined up underneath that number line, they could see that that's the thousands place. And I said, so what place is the 2 in? And they said, that's in the 10,000s place. So I said, okay, what is 2 times 10? And that's 20,000. So this number right here is this number right there. 20,000 plus 6 times 1,000, that's 6,000. And so this number, because it's sitting in that thousands place, is worth 6,000. So this became expanded form. And I only need to expand the places that have digits in them. The zeros don't have to be expanded. So I started to build that concept of expansion at this point. How would you read this form? What would you say if you were reading that aloud? Well, that's a 26. And I taught them that any number less than 100 should have a hyphen if it's 2 words. 26, what? What period is that 26 sitting in? It's in the thousands period. Not thousandth, thousand. 26,000. You do not need a comma here. Sometimes you will in word form. I'm sorry, no, you won't. Sometimes you will need a comma after the word thousand, but in this case we don't. I should not have gone down that rabbit hole. Okay, scientific form is a little bit more of a challenge here. So you would need to talk with them about, you put one number and then all non-zero numbers. So 2.6 times 10, and there are 4 digits after the leader. So that's your exponent. This may be a little bit too much for some students. So you will need to decide if that's taking it too far. And if it is, just leave that off. You don't have to put scientific form. But if you're working with a fast track class and they understand place value fairly well, I would go ahead and throw this scientific form at them. I think that that's good practice if they're ready for it. Okay, so for the next one, I'm still anchoring a little bit. So let's do 1 comma 009 comma 084. So this one is quite a bit worse than I thought. Let me change something here. Just trust me. I'm going to make this be, we'll do this one in a minute. Let me bring this over. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that one because of scientific notation. So let me change something here. This is what happens when I make stuff up as I go instead of writing it out. So let's just do zeros here. We're still anchoring. We don't want to go too far at this point. Okay, expanded. I have a 1 right here with 6 places after it. That is 1 million. So this 1 corresponds to that 1, and then that is worth, it's a 1 in that million seat, so it's worth 1 million. And then I have a 9. Let's study it. This is where those post-it notes help. They can see it lining up. That is a 9 in the thousands place. So 9 in the thousands place. That is expanded form for this one. And that will help you with word form. 1 million. And we need a comma between millions and thousands. 9,000. And that is the word form for this number. 1,009,000. I hate word form. I always have. But that's critical in word problems. They have to be able to read those numbers correctly. So scientific is going to be 1.009. You go until there are just zeros left. Times 10. Be careful here. I would have them to mark off, put a box around everything except the leader, and count the digits in that box. There are 6 places in that box. That is consistent because I know that million is the 6th power in scientific notation. So 1.009 times 10 to the 6th power. Okay, once they get good with that, let's move to standard form. And let's do 0.017. Expanded form. There are no whole numbers. We only have pieces or fractions here. And I have a 1 in the hundredths place. So we have it like that. And then I have a 7 in the thousandths place. So you could write it this way. You could also, if you wanted fractional form, you could write 1/100th plus 7 1,000ths. I don't know that I've ever needed that form, but it's good to help them read it as fractions and decimals. To write this, you take your number, 17, and it ends in the thousandths place. So that is where you get this word. It's not thousand, it's thousandth. And since it's more than 1, it's thousandths. So 17 thousandths is your word form. You know, that might be a better way than doing it this way. Actually, no, it wouldn't. We could say it here. If you want to go that far, This is pretty advanced stuff. You could write the decimal or the fraction, depending on how advanced you wanted to be. Scientific form. Be careful here. This is tricky. And the way that I would teach this, okay, we are using, let me think how best, let me not do it that way because I could be causing a serious problem here. 1.7, you put your leader, digit, and then any non-zeros, times 10. It's always times 10 because we're based on a number system. And you are going to count the things except that last digit. So this is 3 places to the left. So this would be 1.7 times 10 to the negative 3. Remember again what that negative 3 means. Negative 3 is this bar and those 3 zeros. So that bar and those 3 zeros. That is very tough to understand. So be careful. If they're not ready for that, they're not ready for that. And I'm going to divide this up a little bit so that my eye can follow. This is quite a crammed together page. But okay, let's go back to a little bit of an easier one. Let's just stick with whole numbers on this one. So let's do 9, 503. All whole numbers. We don't have to worry about decimals here. So I have 9,500, no tens, and 3 ones. So I have 9,503. That helps them to write word form. 9,500. And I always wanted to put a comma after 100, but there's not a comma in the number. What you do not want to do right there is put and, because and is a decimal point. So you want to say 9,503. Scientific, we have to go all the way to zeros only. So I have to put all of that in there. Times 10 to the, don't count the leader, and there are 3 of them. No decimals, so this is just a plain 3, positive 3. 10 to the 3rd power. Okay, here's the next example. Let's do 635.9. So I have a 6 in the hundreds place, a 3 in the tens place, so 3 tens, that's 3 times 10, or 30, and a 5 in the ones place. And then I have a fraction 9/10, or you could write it 0.9, either way. So word form is going to be 600. Don't put commas in that units period. So 635. It's less than 100, so I'll hyphenate it. And 9, not tens, 9/10. And I'm going to leave scientific notation off of this one because mixing whole and decimal scientific notation is a nightmare. So let's just take this one. Let's eliminate scientific notation here. You can simply just cross it out. And if you don't feel like your students are ready for scientific, don't even go there to begin with. Those three forms are plenty for a beginner. All right, let me do another decimal. So let's do 0.00009. For expanded form, I only have to do a fraction. That is 9, and let's count our places. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000th. So 900,000ths. 900,000ths. There are never commas after a decimal, so we won't use that in our word form either. But make sure you're doing the TH for your fraction. This one I can write in scientific form. We have a 9 times 10. And let's look at our places. So we don't count our liter. We're going to count everything over here back to the decimal. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4 places back to the decimal. So 9 times 10 to the, actually I need to count that liter, to the -5. 9 times 10 to the -5. You can also remember open that door for 900,000ths. Let me remind you what that looks like. Use those doors after you get it. And there, sure enough, is that -5 that goes with 100,000th. So if they forget what the answer should be, it is behind the door. And let me show you what I'm counting here. I'm counting back those places. After you do not count the 9, technically you are counting the 9. Here is the 1, 2, 3. In fact, that's how we need to do it. There are the 5 places back from the end of that number. That's a better way than counting that liter 0. So again, 1, that's my liter, but it counts 2, 3, 4, 5 places back to the decimal. All right, one more and I'll hush. Let's do, I'm not going to use scientific on this one because I want to just focus on a large number for these three forms. So let's do 103, comma, 005, comma, 005, decimal, 005. Gracious. All right. The 1 is in the 100 million seat. So 100 million. And then I have a 3 in the million seat. Then I have a 5 in the thousands seat. Then I have a 5 in the ones seat. And I have a 5 in the thousandths seat. Those other zeros we don't have to worry about. So this will help me with my word form. In the millions period, I have 103. So 103, And then we're moving into the thousands period. I don't want the and in there. That's the decimal point. So 103 million. That would help. 103 million, comma, 5,000 5 and, because I'm ready for my decimal now, 5,000ths. $103,000,000, 5,000, 5, and 5,000ths. Let me just color code this one for you. Here's the 103 million. Here's the 5,000. Here's the 5. And I'm out of colors, so let me grab a green. And then here is the 5,000ths. And I'm going to add one more color because that decimal point is so incredibly important. There's the and. At the point you move from whole numbers into decimals or fractions, you want the word and. Again, this can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. You need to think about your students and their levels. Also think about their level of frustration. You could just start with standard form and then lead to expanded, or however you choose to do it will be fine. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. It's definitely a very complicated piece. It's a very time-consuming piece, but I think it's a very valuable piece. It certainly was for my students. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.